This is Optimal Finance Daily, episode 567, What Will You Leave the Next Generation? By William Cowie with budgetsaresexy.com. And I'm Dan, your host, and this is where I read to you from some of the best blogs on personal finance, and I narrate articles from Mr. Money Mustache, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, Get Rich Slowly, Afford Anything, The Mad Scientist, and many more, sort of like a gigantic ongoing audiobook that's free of charge. So if you have any author requests of your own, please let us know over at oldpodcast.com. Today's post comes from a guest author on Budgets Are Sexy, William Cowie, a retired businessman. And before we get to his post, a big thanks to ZipRecruiter for their support. Are you hiring? ZipRecruiter has revolutionized how you do it. Their technology identifies people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. They find great candidates for you. So try it for free today at ziprecruiter.com/OFD. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. For now, let's get to today's post and start optimizing your life. What Will You Leave the Next Generation? By William Cowie with budgetsaresexy.com. I had the honor of meeting Jay Money at FinCon in Denver. He recently became a dad, and I was thinking about that one day when Greg, a good friend of mine, called. Not very happily, I might add. Greg's oldest son drove his car home one evening. He saw the temperature gauge rising but kept driving, blowing the engine before he got home. "What were you thinking, son?" Greg asked after the dust had settled. "I don't know, Dad. I just hoped I could make it home." He also had no idea this was a $2,000 don't know. As Greg talked to his son, he realized that he had never taught his son what to do when he sees the temp gauge climb. Seems pretty basic to us, but how is a 19-year-old kid going to know if someone doesn't tell him? This is not something one picks up by osmosis. His son certainly didn't have any desire to do damage to the car, but he simply didn't know how serious, read expensive, that temperature reading was. It's easy to miss things that seem obvious to us, especially when it comes to passing on wisdom to the next generation. Wouldn't all of us like to leave the world a better place? What are we actually doing to make that happen? The true legacy. My parents were as middle class gets, but they were frugal to the extreme. My mom's still alive, to the ongoing pain of every penny that passes through her hands, so I haven't actually inherited anything yet, but I know when the time comes, they will have left something for us in the material realm. However, it's not the material possessions they leave that define my parents' legacy. It's the values, the examples, the coaching and actions. Both my parents and in-laws instilled great values in my wife and I, by setting an example, but also by explicit coaching too, with their words. Debt is nothing other than impatience. Both sets of parents never had credit cards, but that wasn't all. They took great pains to explain why saving beats debt. Debt is nothing other than impatience. If you're going to take 2, 3, 4 years to pay for something, why not save and buy it for cash? The only difference is when you get it, and waiting reduces the price by a lot. My parents saved for years to buy new cars, each of which they then kept for at least 10 years. My dad still drove his 1958 VW Bug 20 years later. Never mind that the paint was faded and he had to park it with the wheels to the curb. He also didn't care that it was murder on a teenage boy's ego. I was on him like white on rice to get something a little cooler to salvage my reputation. A few reams of glossy brochures for cool new cars found their way onto his desk. He was unfazed. We were stuck with the Bug. "It gets me where I want to be, and I need nothing more than that," he would say. Not caring what other people think. Not caring what other people think is also a big part of smart financial living. We were taught that, and we saw our parents live it out. A few posts made the rounds recently about the awkwardness of friends extending invitations which involve non-frugal spending. Those invitations are challenging, and it's easy to compromise our principles in the name of maintaining friendships. My dad, though, never wavered. Funnily enough, he never lacked for friends, and I had no choice but to notice that. His funeral was one of the best attended in years because it seems everyone knew him and loved him. My father-in-law was a wine farmer, an industry notorious for conspicuous consumption. He didn't care. When we bought a really nice dining room set, we were young then, his only comment was, "Why would anybody be so stupid to spend all that money for what other people think?" Our dads didn't give a fig what others thought of their cars, their clothes, or the fact that they never ate out. My father-in-law once famously said if we wanted to treat him, we should tell him we're not taking him out to eat. He was one of the most popular men in his neighborhood, too. Here were two men who epitomized frugal living, yet each of them was still one of the most popular people around their neighborhood. I wish I could say I was smart enough to heed all that counsel. Sadly, I can't say I'm the brightest bulb in the box. But in the end, our parents' words hit their mark. Looking back, I'm grateful, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to say that before my dad passed away. It was a little like in the movie The Blind Side when Sandra Bullock told Tim McGraw, "You're right," to which he replied, "How did that taste coming out of your mouth?" Around us, I see many acquaintances that were not as fortunate as we were. Their parents never told them about smart money management. All too often, parents don't leave the world a better place for their offspring by not talking the talk, even if they walk the walk. Watching the times and seasons. The biggest thing I learned from my dad is to watch the times and the seasons. Even though he was a low-level government bureaucrat at the time, he bought an empty lot soon after he got married. He picked a nice location with a great view, but one that was out of town a ways. He bought it in a down economy, so he got it cheap. Once they paid it off, they built a fairly modest house on the lot in a recession when he got great deals from the architect and contractors. Then he focused on getting it paid off. Very simple and very patient. As it turned out, the location he picked became quite desirable as the city expanded. Nowadays, there isn't a home under $1 million in their development, except for theirs, of course. But because my dad looked ahead, he was able to get a nice house in a great location for one of the bargains of the century. Buy and hold really works in real estate, by the way. The neat thing is, he told me about every step, what he did and why. How about you? What do you pass on to the next generation? Are you leaving something tangible for their benefit? More importantly, are you leaving them wisdom they can use for their benefit? Are you actually talking about these things in addition to setting the example? Remember Greg. He modeled good care of his cars, but his kids didn't even notice. The reason they didn't notice is because he takes good care of his cars and they never break down. So for his kids, taking care of a car is a non-issue, much like property taxes and health insurance. It's just there. When you do things right, odds are your kids and relatives simply won't notice it. If we assume they will simply pick it up by osmosis, well, we all know what assuming does. Needless to say, Greg has talked with his other kids about what maintaining a car means, and all is not lost, other than that ouch of $2,000. Are you inspiring the next generation to manage their money smartly? Life requires many skills, and managing money is a big one. How are you actually coaching the next generation? You just listened to the post titled, "What Will You Leave the Next Generation?" by William Cowie with budgetsaresexy.com. And thank you again to ZipRecruiter for sponsoring this episode. Are you hiring? Posting your position to job sites and then waiting for the right people to see it? ZipRecruiter knew there was a smarter way, so they built a platform that finds the right job candidates for you. ZipRecruiter learns what you're looking for, identifies people with the right experience, then invites them to apply to your job. And these invitations have revolutionized how you find your next hire. In fact, 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. And ZipRecruiter doesn't stop there. They even spotlight the strongest applications you receive, so you never miss a great match. The right candidates are out there, and ZipRecruiter is how you find them. Right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/OFD. That's ZipRecruiter.com/OFD. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And a quick note that you can now listen to this show on Amazon in-home devices like the Echo and Dot. All you have to do is tell your Amazon device, "Enable Optimal Finance Daily," and she should get it all set up just like that. You can skip forward and backward, change episodes, and a lot more. So again, just tell that Amazon device of yours to enable Optimal Finance Daily. And that should do it for today. Thank you as always for being here and listening each and every day. I'll see you in the Wednesday show tomorrow. That's where we'll have a post from Ramit Sethi of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And it's where your optimal life awaits.